Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Christian Salvucci, and I am the marketing coordinator here at SquareWorks Consulting. If you have any questions that come up throughout this presentation, we ask that you submit your questions to the Q&A chat box on the bottom of your screen. We will be addressing all of these during the live Q&A session following the solution demo from Seth. So we'd like to begin with a few introductions with who you're going to be hearing from today.
Hi everyone, this is Seth Duda. I'm a NetSuite solution architect at SquareWorks, and I lead all the development here at SquareWorks related to our NetSuite add-ons.
Hello everyone, my name is David Singleton. I'm the business development executive here at SquareWorks. Okay, well, I'll get things moving and then hand it off back to Seth. So for those of you who are at one of our webinars for the first time, I just wanted to introduce you to who SquareWorks is. So we're a boutique NetSuite Alliance and SDN partner, basically a one-stop shop for implementations, optimizations, and support, as well as creating native NetSuite add-ons, one of which we're going to be showing you today. We are located in Boston, Mass, and we have clients across the US and Canada and the world. And all of our functional consultants have over 10 years of business experience, and every one of the company is NetSuite certified. We've actually been recognized by external organizations such as CIO Review as one of the top NetSuite solution providers. So today we'll be taking a look at advanced bill management. This is a native NetSuite bundle, and it's changing the way NetSuite clients work with this invoice detail capture process. We've enabled the most powerful OCR, which is Optical Character Recognition technology, combined with artificial intelligence, so we can autofill all vendor invoice details without the need to maintain OCR templates, and basically remove quite a bit of the manual entry. The only thing you'll need to do is just double check the work. But you can upload vendor invoices into NetSuite by drag and drop, or you can email it as well, and we'll show you that. But it also improves financial controls by integrating SquareWorks approval workflow automation, which helps approve invoices through configurable workflows, even the most complex workflows that you could imagine. And it also comes with three-way match, which allows you to really take care of all of your receipts, purchase orders, and vendor bills, invoices in NetSuite, and make sure that everything is compliant and with your predefined thresholds. And that does so with providing a full audit trail of that approval process, which Seth will be showing you. The nice thing is that this means it's accessible wherever you get NetSuite. You can also maintain processes while people are working from home, which so many people are during these times. And being able to move the approval process forward through emails while giving a full audit track. The nice thing is they can even approve from email without logging into NetSuite from their cell phone. Here are some of our clients, many of whom you will be familiar with. Sorry, this is a mandatory slide, as you can imagine. But I'd also like to share a featured case study with AltaView, somebody using the advanced bill management solution that we're going to be showcasing today. These are all the NetSuite bundles that we offer, but we're going to be focusing on these first two. However, if you have any questions about the others, please don't hesitate to contact us. So now I'm going to hand things over to Seth so he can take us through the demo.
Okay, thanks, David. So today we're going to be going through an end-to-end process of creating purchase orders in NetSuite, routing them for approval, uploading vendor invoices using OCR. I'll show three-way match, and also actually routing those invoices for approval. So we're really going to go end-to-end through the whole process. And as mentioned, if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we can answer them at the end. I'm going to start by entering a purchase order in NetSuite. And to do that, I'm actually just going to switch to an employee center role. So often companies, you would have employees set up with this role to be able to enter purchase orders. And this is just native NetSuite functionality. I'm just going to enter a purchase request, and then I'm going to show how we can route this for approval, and then actually use this to upload a vendor invoice, match to this PO, and so on. So I'm just going to quickly just choose a vendor here. Just choose AAA Consultants. And just quickly put in a line, consulting services for $100. Go ahead and save this purchase request. Once the purchase request has been saved, the first thing you're going to notice is that it's in a not submitted state, meaning that it needs to be submitted for approval. So this submit button up here is part of the advanced bill management product. It's going to add this button to any purchase request or purchase order that hasn't been submitted for approval yet. And when you click this, it's going to route it through an approval process. Now, the approval process that your purchase orders can route through is extremely flexible. I'm just going to show a very simple one-step approval process in the demo. But this can be adapted to nearly any use case you can throw at it in terms of how you want things to route. So I'm going to go ahead and press submit to actually kick off the approval process. All right, so it's been submitted. I'm actually going to switch to a different role so that I can go in and approve that purchase order. And I'm just going to refresh my view right here. So on my dashboard, I've just switched to a different role in NetSuite. And I have a dashboard set up to see anything that is pending my approval. So right here in the middle of the screen, you can see transactions pending my approval. And I have that purchase order that I just submitted for approval showing up. So I am currently an approver on this purchase order. So let's go into that purchase order, take a look at it so we can actually approve it. All right, so here's that purchase order I just created. You're going to see approve and reject buttons at the top since I'm currently listed as an approver. And I'm going to take a look at the approval history tab at the bottom to see kind of the full history of the approval process. So in this demo, it's just a very simple one-step approval process. So we just have one line here. It lists who the current approver is, the type of approval, this is an employee type approval, and the date and time was requested, and the current status. If I click approve and reject, I can approve right through NetSuite through the UI. If I click approve, I can put in a comment optionally and press OK. Or if there's an issue, I can push reject. It's going to actually require that I put in a rejection reason if I do this and press OK to reject it. However, the nice thing about this is you don't actually have to have employees log into NetSuite to actually approve purchase orders. And when we get down to the vendor bill, vendor invoice side, you actually, same process will work. You can approve right from email. And those employees don't even need access to NetSuite. They don't even need a license. So the way that the email is received, let me just open up the email that I just got. It's going to be sent to the approver. In the email, this is fully configurable. At the top, you just have links to log into NetSuite if you do have access to log into NetSuite. At the bottom, you have information about the purchase order, so various fields from the purchase order form. Other fields can be included, so any body level or line level fields from the PO, you can easily include at the bottom of these emails. And you can customize everything at the top as well. Now there's approve and reject buttons in the middle of the email. And this is going to allow people on their phone, on their desktop to just easily click approve. It opens up a new email message where you can put in a comment if you'd like to approve, and then press send. And this is going to go back to your NetSuite account. Make sure that whoever sent that email back corresponds to the current approver. And if everything lines up, it will mark that request as approved. The rejection works the same way. If I come into the email, click reject, I can put in a rejection reason and press send, and it would mark my request as rejected. So it's just important to reiterate here that when you approve via email, you don't need a license in NetSuite, which is really nice. Back to the NetSuite UI, those same actions, approve and reject, are available in the UI as well if you're able to log in. So I'm going to go ahead and just approve this purchase order through the UI. I'm not going to put in a comment, that's optional, and I'm just going to press OK. Now this is going to mark the purchase order as fully approved since I just had a one-step approval process for this demo. And if I go to the approval history tab, we're going to see that history. So it's going to mark that one row there as approved. is going to keep track of who approved it, the date and time it was approved. Whenever something is fully approved, by default, we're going to send out an email to whoever submitted the purchase order, letting them know that it was approved. Here's a copy of the email that I just received. So in this email, very similar, you're going to have fields from the purchase order at the bottom and then information at the top. This is a very simple email, just saying that it's been fully approved. The same thing happens if a purchase order is rejected as well. An email is going to go out to whoever submitted that purchase order. It's actually going to include a copy of the rejection reason that was entered. And that will go right back to the original person. They can then log in, edit their purchase order. Maybe they need to change something and then try submitting it for approval again. All right, so at this point, we have a purchase order. It is approved. You can then enter receipts into NetSuite and move through the process. So I'm going to stop here on the purchase order side. You can imagine you might enter a receipt, save the receipt, and then enter a bill against this. I'm going to now jump over to the invoice capture side, where we're going to be uploading a vendor invoice into NetSuite. We're going to associate that vendor invoice to a purchase order. And I'll show how the three-way match works and how approvals work. So to do that, I'm going to go to my dashboard. On my dashboard, I have a few things set up. There's a few ways to access these screens, but it's nice to have a dashboard that kind of gives you shortcuts to do this. So on the dashboard, you can see right on the left, there's a shortcut for upload invoices. If I click that, it's going to bring me right to a drag and drop screen where I can drag and drop one or more invoices right into NetSuite. It's important to mention that this isn't the only way you can get invoices into NetSuite. You can also email them in. So it's very common if you have an AP inbox set up, you can auto forward emails from your AP inbox to a dedicated NetSuite email address that's provided when you set up the solution. And those will be loaded right into your NetSuite account, very similar to dragging and dropping them in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drag a sample invoice in. This invoice has a purchase order associated with it. And I'm going to drop it right on the screen here and press upload. This is going to go out in real time. It's going to scan that document, look for key points of information such as the vendor name, PO number, invoice amount, line item information, and so on. And when it's done scanning, it's going to bring me right to the vendor bill screen in NetSuite. So on the right-hand side of the screen, let me just minimize this a little bit. On the right-hand side of the screen, this is the native NetSuite vendor bill form. We don't have a separate form to capture this information. We're leveraging native NetSuite where we can in this product. And what that means is if you have any existing workflows, scripts, customizations that you've already built or have on your vendor bill forms, those will all still work perfectly fine. You can think of this process as really just sitting on top of what you might already have in NetSuite, really trying to speed up the data entry process. On the left-hand side of the screen, we have the split screen view where you can see the original document. Let me just expand that a little bit. This is the invoice that I just uploaded. It has 4 lines in it. It has a shipping cost and invoice number, PO number, and so on. So what our solution did is it scanned this document, extracted the vendor name, Delta Consultants, extracted the invoice number right here, and took all that information and the lines and took that information and pre-populated your vendor bill form on the right. So you're going to notice the vendor field. Let me just minimize this again so we can see all the fields. You're going to notice the vendor field right here has been already populated with Delta Consultants. The purchase order field right here has auto-selected the purchase order that this bill is associated with. The vendor invoice number has been populated automatically. The date has been populated automatically. And the lines have automatically been matched to the PO lines. The other thing I'd like to mention is on the expense tab, we actually automatically extracted the shipping cost from that invoice and entered it as an expense line coded to a specific account. The way that this is working, since I have a purchase order selected, native NetSuite, if you were to create a vendor bill, in NetSuite and associate to a purchase order, NetSuite will just pull in all of the open lines from that purchase order, and you have to go in and manually change quantities and amounts based off of what was in the invoice. So we're trying to do that for you. So we're still pulling all the open lines from the purchase order, but based off of the invoice lines, we're going to try to set the quantity, rate, and amount based off of the invoice. right? So the PO itself might have actually had a higher quantity for some of these, and we actually set it to be what we found in the document. And you're actually going to notice at the very bottom, there's a line right here, this fifth line right here. This was actually a line that wasn't in the document. It left it as quantity 0, even though if I were to take a look at that purchase order, it actually has a quantity on it. So you can see that it's just setting the lines based off of the lines in the document. At this point, you would review what has been captured, make sure everything is entered properly, and go ahead and save the bill. This is going to be saved in a non-posting state, meaning we need to submit this bill for approval before it's going to be posting and can be used to generate payment. Before I save this, though, I want to just show our throw match validation that's in place. So if I were to just save this as is, this is within tolerances and it would go ahead and save without any issues. So I'm just going to change one of these lines to have a very large quantity, more than what was on the original PO 9000. And we go ahead and save the bill. This is going to run through a match validation. It is actually running before the bill is even saved to NetSuite. So it's very nice. If there's an issue is identified, you can easily press cancel, make a change. Maybe this should have been, I don't know, 190, and try to save it again. It's going to run that same validation again and warn you of any issues. Now, just to highlight what is showing up here, it's highlighting specific lines that may or may not have, or may have issues. This is saying item line 1, the quantity exceeds the purchase order. If I hover over this help bubble, it's showing that the PO's quantity was 10, but I'm trying to enter a vendor bill for 190. And also we'll look at receipts if you're entering receipts in NetSuite. If I hover over this help bubble here saying I've received 10, but I'm trying to enter a vendor bill or invoice for 190. And the nice thing here is it's actually going to look across other vendor bills that you've already entered against this purchase order. So it's not just this vendor bill against the single PO. It could be multiple vendor bills that it's actually taking into account and multiple receipts that it's taking into account while it's doing this comparison. The way you can set up thresholds is very flexible. You can set up thresholds at an overall total level. And you actually see this right down here is actually just comparing the total of the PO versus the total of the vendor bills to see if you've gone over a tolerance. But you can also set it up at the line level as well. And for each of these, you can define percent-based thresholds or amount-based thresholds. This is currently set up to actually allow me to save this vendor bill, even though there are these variances that are found. And there's a reason for variances box where you can type in a reason. Now you can actually configure this to say, well, I don't want anyone to save a bill if there's any variances. We need to correct the issue up front before we do this. That is an option, but often companies do like setting this up so you can save it with variances and then maybe use this information to drive an approval process downstream. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and just put in a reason. I'm just going to write test, save with the variances, and it's going to go ahead and save the vendor bill. Once the vendor bill has been saved, you're going to notice it's very similar to the purchase order. It's in a not submitted state. There's a submit button right here to submit this bill for approval. And there's an approval history tab at the bottom, very similar to how it worked on the purchase order. So the look and feel and how you interact with our approvals is going to be exactly the same, regardless if you're working with purchase orders or vendor bills. From an end user perspective, it's all going to be the same. The only thing that will change is how it might route for approval. So when you're routing a vendor bill for approval, maybe there's extra steps you need to go through if the vendor bill wasn't created from a purchase order, or if there's 3 match variances, maybe it needs to go through an extra step. Those are all things that can be easily configured in the approval solution, or as part of invoice bill management. If you need to see the original invoice that was uploaded, if you go to any vendor bill, for instance this, you can easily see the invoice by going to communication, files, and you have the original invoice attached right to the vendor bill. But you can also just click view invoice on the top. There's a button up here. It's even easier. Click that and it's going to bring you right to the split screen view that we originally saw. All right, so let's go ahead and submit this for approval. In this demo, I have again, a very simple approval process set up. It's actually a 2-step approval process. And the first step of the process is to check to see if there's any 3 match variances. If there's 3 match variances, in this case there are, it's going to route to an employee for approval. So let's go down to the approval history tab and take a look at what happened. So it routed, in this case, to David for approval. This is a throw match review step, and this step would actually be skipped if there were no throw match variances found. But since there were, it routed to David for approval. Now David's going to receive an email. This is what the email looks like that David just received. In the email, you're going to see summary information at the top, so David could log in and view that vendor bill. And information at the bottom, these are all fields from the vendor bill that can be included right in the email. The other nice thing is that there's an attachment right in the email, and that attachment is the original invoice that was uploaded to NetSuite. From here, David could, if he wants to, he could approve or reject right from the email. David doesn't need access to NetSuite, but if he wanted to, he could log in. Probably he would log in since he's kind of responsible for this kind of looking into the three match issues. He would log into NetSuite, view the vendor bill, maybe take a look at what those three match variances were. There's a tab that's right here where you can see all of the variances that were found at the time the bill was saved. And let's assume this looks good. Dave would go ahead and approve the vendor bill, and that would move through the approval process. Right. So now I want to show the process of uploading a vendor invoice that does not have a purchase order. So there's kind of often there's kind of two types of invoices. You get the ones with the POs and the ones without the POs. And the process is a little bit different. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard. And I'm going to upload a new invoice. So I'm going to go to Upload Invoices. I'm going to drag a invoice in that has no purchase order. Press Upload. And this is going to bring me to the same vendor bill screen to capture the details, but there's going to be no purchase order selected. This invoice that I'm uploading has no reference to a PO number in it. So we're going to see the purchase order dropdown right here in the middle of the screen is empty. If this was an invoice that actually should have been associated to a purchase order, you can always click the dropdown and choose which purchase order it should be associated with. But in this case, let's assume this shouldn't have a purchase order. The way this works is it's not going to have a purchase order to look at to figure out what the lines are and to match to. So it's going to extract the information right from the document and enter them as either expense lines or item lines, and that can be configured depending on the vendor. But you're going to notice here, we have 4 lines that are extracted from the table right here, and then 1 line for the freight or shipping cost at the bottom. We do have functionality to actually consolidate these lines as well. It's a new feature. That is pretty common. If you're entering vendor bills without a purchase order, maybe you just want to enter 1 line that's coded to a specific account, and that's really all you need to do. Very easy to configure. It's just a setting, and when you turn it on, you would actually see 2 lines here. You see 1 consolidated line and then 1 line for the freight and delivery, and that is it. At this point, if you were to save this bill, let me go ahead and save it. It's going to quickly check to see if there's any 3 match issues, but there's no purchase order, so there's really nothing to match to. So it lets it go through and save the bill right away. And again, this needs to be submitted for approval. So let's submit this. And that's going to route through a very similar approval process. In this case, since there are no 3 match issues, it's going to skip that first step that I showed. It's not going to route to David for approval. It's actually going to skip over him and route to kind of step number 2 of the process and actually have myself set up as the approver. That is why I see approve and check buttons at the top. So I could come in here, I could go ahead and approve it, put in a comment, press OK. And this would mark the vendor bill as fully approved and then could be used to generate payment in NetSuite. All right, so it has been saved. The next thing I want to highlight related to approvals, which is a really nice feature, is often maybe someone's just away for the day and you just need to kind of get it past someone, or you just need to mark a vendor bill as fully approved for whatever reason, it comes up. We have functionality built into our solution to give certain users, specified by role, the ability to override an approval process on the fly for a particular record. So let's actually go back to the first bill that I created, because I know that's still in the approval process. This is the one that was associated with purchase order. It's still pending David's approval. And I'm not logged in as David, so I can't really move it forward at this point. So I could reach out to David and have him approve, but let's say David's away and we just need to get this through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually switch to a role that has a little more privilege in NetSuite. And it's going to give me the ability to override this approval process on the fly. I'm just going to switch to an administrator role. Go to that purchase or that vendor bill and take a look at the approval history tab again. And we're going to notice since I'm logged in as the admin, I see this change approver link right here. And when I click that, it's actually going to give me the ability to change who the approver is for this step. So instead of David, maybe I want to select someone else. Or maybe I want to change like at a whole, who can approve this? Maybe it's a role, anyone with a specific role could approve instead of David. And I could choose the role. So this is an easy way for, often it's just the administrator to come in and override things on the fly if needed. This is a really nice feature. If you were to try to do this via kind of native workflow in NetSuite, you will get stuck, and it's really tough to move approval processes through without this type of functionality if things come up. The other way that these kind of super users or super approvers can move things through the process is to click the super approve button at the top. And when I click that, this is a way for someone to just mark this vendor bill as fully approved, skipping any approval step that might have been set up. So this is a way for someone to quickly just kind of mark it as approved and move on. And often these needs come up, and this is a nice functionality to make that possible. All right, and then last, I just wanted to highlight some additional features of our solution. I'm going to switch back to the dashboard that I was showing earlier, where I have my shortcuts here. So at the top here, I just want to highlight some of the things that are possible. So right on the screen here, I have a part of my dashboard has a vendor invoice queue. So I'm logged in as, imagine, an AP clerk. I can easily see what has been uploaded to NetSuite. Maybe these are invoices coming from email that I need to convert into a vendor bill. So at the top here is called an invoice queue. And this is where you would go day to day to see, okay, I have, let's say, 2 documents that have been uploaded to NetSuite. I need to create vendor bills for those. I can come right here, click create bill, and it would bring me right to the vendor bill screen to save that bill. So this is the queue at the top. This is really what AP might use day to day to process invoices and create the vendor bills, submit them for approval. In the middle here, we have a view to show transactions pending your approval. So I can see right here, I have a purchase order that's currently pending my approval. And on the left here, we have some shortcuts. So we talked about the invoice upload process and how you drag them in, and briefly touched on the queue, which you can actually see right here. But I didn't talk about bulk approval at all. So there's functionality built into our solution for both purchase orders and vendor bills, where if you want to enable bulk approval, where allowing someone to go in and approve multiple purchase orders or multiple vendor bills at once, that functionality exists. And if I open that up, it looks like this. So very simple. It's a bulk approval screen. It's going to show you everything pending your approval. I currently have nothing pending my approval, so it's not listed here. But you can select them all, press approve selected, and it's going to do it in bulk. Often this is disabled because it kind of often people stop looking at the individual records when they approve in bulk. But this functionality is definitely useful in certain use cases. And last, we have out of office delegation. And this also applies to an approval process. So people go out of office, go on vacation. If you need to have something route to someone else while you're out of the office, you can easily put in your out of office begin date, end date, who your delegate should be. Go ahead and save this. And then if anything routes to you while you're out of office, it goes right to your delegate for approval. If they don't approve by the time you get back, it routes right back to yourself for approval. So very nice functionality built right into this approval process as well. And that about wraps it up. David, anything else that you wanted to highlight before we wrap things up?
No, I think that was very solid. I think it's probably a good time to take questions and answers. We have a few messages in the chat and as well as in the QA section. I believe Christian will be taking care of those questions.
Yeah, thank you both. That was an awesome presentation. So starting with some of the questions, Seth, does this work with Office 2010 or only with newer versions of Office like Office 365?
In terms of, I'm assuming this is in terms of the email-based approval. It works with any email client. So yes, it works with Gmail, it works with Outlook. It doesn't really matter in the version.
Awesome. So another question is if PO and PO approval has already been rolled out using enhanced NetSuite native functionality, can we still use the advanced bill management to simplify invoice entry?
Yeah, great question. So our product has multiple versions, and you can go ahead and just buy a version that just has the OCR showing you that split screen view. You don't have to use the approvals, but the approvals are definitely an added benefit.
Mhm.
But depending on the edition you purchase, you don't have to take advantage of them.
Awesome. So another question, do vendor names need to match exactly, or does the tool remember aliases?
Yep, so it's going to remember. So if the first thing it's going to do is going to take that vendor name that it extracts, look for an exact match. So if it finds an exact match, it's going to pick that vendor. And then if it doesn't, it's going to ask you to choose the vendor the first time. And then in future invoices you upload, it's going to remember that you kind of mapped the two. Essentially, it's going to remember what you chose last time for that vendor when you're entering the vendor bill and choose it again for you.
Awesome. So this next question is kind of similar. So if the vendor is not already set up and they do the drag and drop, will it give an error or say the vendor is not found?
It's not going to give an error. So if let me go to our queue here just to show you
Mm-hmm.
what would happen. So I'm going to go to Advanced Bill Management, Invoice Queue. And this is just where you would go. You could look at this on your dashboard, but you can come to this page as well to see what has been uploaded. So if you don't have a vendor yet, this queue is still going to show the vendor name that was extracted from the document, regardless if you have a vendor in NetSuite or not with that name. Once you click Create Bill, that's where it's going to take the name right here, try to match it to what you have in your NetSuite account to link things up. If it can't find a match, it would just leave the kind of the vendor field on your vendor bill form empty and ask you to choose one. So you could come in there and maybe create a new vendor on the fly to do that, but that's what would happen. It's not going to error out. It's just not going to pick a vendor for you.
Okay. Awesome. So the next question is, when it comes to approving invoices without a PO, do you need to have a NetSuite user or can it be done via email like the PO process?
It can be done like the PO process as well. Yep, you don't need a
Okay.
license to do any approvals. And it's also good to mention the approvals that you saw can actually be applied to nearly any record in NetSuite. So if you want to use this on expense reports or other records, you can. It works the exact same way. In terms of implementation scope, if you want to move forward with this product, the scope of our implementations is usually limited to just setting up approvals on POs and vendor bills. But we can always expand that scope and implement it on other record types very easily.
Mm-hmm. That was actually the next question. So thank you for divulging into that. So this can be used for other transactions. This is just the default that we have it set for.
Yeah, and so it depends on the edition of the product. So the advanced edition of the product, it includes approvals on purchase orders and vendor bills, but can be used outside of those. So if you have an admin internally that could go in and set up, kind of configure our approval solution, that's always a possibility, but you're not limited. However, the standard edition of our product is just going to add approvals to vendor bills and you cannot add approvals to other record types with the standard edition.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. We did have a couple of questions about the out of office delegation. So it seems like those have been answered already with that last demo that you did. So we can move on from
Great.
those. So can this process consolidated invoices?
Can it process consolidated invoices? If that means like consolidate the lines, yes. I'm not sure. If someone wants to rephrase the question, I can help answer it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you export credit card statements through this process?
I would say it's out of scope of this product. So no.
Okay. Oh, and we got a rephrasing on that last question, meaning a vendor has 10 invoices on one summary bill.
So it does not support multiple invoices on one PDF. So they would need to be split into separate PDFs. So it's going to assume each PDF needs to result in a single vendor bill being created.
Okay. Another question is, does the approval types have to have a matching native NetSuite approval?
Can you say that again?
So does the other approval types have to have a matching native NetSuite approval?
I'm not sure what that is asking. If someone wants to rephrase the question, I can try to answer that.
Okay. So let's jump. So those were all from the Q&A box. So now we're going to jump over to the chat box. So what happens if someone rejects a request via email but does not enter a required description?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, there's no way to require someone to type something in their email response. So it's going to reject it and just not capture a rejection reason in NetSuite. An email is still going to be sent to the original submitter of, let's say, the purchase order, letting them know it's been rejected, but it's not going to include any reason in that email.
Okay. So the next question is, if we turn on approval required for non-inventory POs, will that cause our inventory POs to also need to be approved? Or can we set inventory POs to be automatically approved while non-inventory POs required to be approved?
Yep, very easy to kind of segregate what requires approval and what doesn't require approval. Often we recommend having that submit button on all purchase orders, so you still got to submit it for approval, but then some of them might just get approved right away when you click that submit button. Other ones will go through an approval process just to keep things consistent. It's not a requirement, that's often what we end up doing. But if you wanted, like if there's a way to really identify certain records that just should automatically be approved, and that's it also can be done pretty easily.
Awesome. So this next question, I believe we did answer it after it was asked, but I will answer very quickly. So does ABM require a NetSuite license? And if you are doing the approvals through the email itself, you don't have to sign in, so it doesn't require the license.
I would just add it does require a license to upload and save the vendor bills.
Right. So just the approval buttons through the email don't require the license.
Correct.
The next question is, must all uploaded vendor invoices also have a related NetSuite PO entered? So they're saying they do not normally use POs for vendor invoices for things like utilities.
Yeah, it does not need to have a purchase order. If you don't use purchase orders at all, there's actually a setting just to not show that purchase order dropdown on the form when you're entering the vendor bill. But if you see the purchase order dropdown, you don't have to choose a purchase order. It works either way.
Awesome. So this next question, for the OCR technology itself, are there any limitations related to non-US entities with non-English invoices?
It does support a range of other languages. You can follow up with David for further information.
Okay. And I believe we touched upon this next question as well. So how can we get ABM to learn to map invoice lines to NetSuite lines if it does not match an invoice correctly?
It's going to, let me open up one of these to try to explain that. Let's just create this one with a PO. And I'll try to explain what's happening. So it's going to try to do the mapping for you. So it's going to take a look at the description on each line. So this is assuming you have a purchase order associated with bill. It's going to take a look at the description. If you have a SKU or item number, it's going to take a look at that and compare that to the item name, the vendor's item name, the manufacturer part number. These are all things that might be stored in NetSuite on your item record, and the line description to try to find the matching row to set the quantity price accordingly. And if it can't find a match, it would just leave a row at 0. So that's how it's going to work for things with purchase orders. In that case, the coding's already done for you on the purchase order. You already know which items will be selected based off the purchase order. What you don't know is how this kind of the document maps to those lines on the purchase order. And that's kind of how the logic works there. If you do not have a purchase order, let me just choose none. When it captures the lines without a purchase order, you're seeing here that it's actually putting in category, account, department, and class. Those aren't coming from this document anywhere. What we're doing is we're actually looking up what you've done in the past in NetSuite for the particular vendor. And based off of the descriptions of all these lines, it's going to try to go back and find what is the most similar line you've entered in the past and use that past line to figure out what category, account, department, and class should be selected. So there's really nothing to kind of set up to make this happen. It's really going to look at what you've done in the past to figure it out for you.
Okay, awesome. So this next question is, can you name some examples of complicated approval processes that you have automated with this solution?
Yeah. Many. I would say a very complex approval process might be if you have an approval matrix where you have, maybe you need to look at the, I'll say the department at the line level, plus the subsidiary at the header level, plus the amount of the vendor bill to figure out who the appropriate approver should be. You need to kind of have this big matrix. We've done stuff like that with our solution.
Or even adding people that are specific to the vendor as well. Right?
Yeah. We've done all sorts. It ranges from maybe just department level approval where you have an approver for each department or an approver for a specific vendor, or maybe people are manually typing in who the approver should be on the bill. That's pretty common too. And you just have a field for the employee and you can select who the approver should be. Or you have this very complex approval matrix. It's a wide range. We always recommend trying to keep it as simple as possible because the more complex it is, the more maintenance it is to maintain who your approver should be.
Okay, awesome. So I'm scrolling through these questions. We have a couple of repeat ones. So this next one, if invoices come in through email, how do they show up to the AP user? Is there a queue or something like that?
Yeah, good question. So on the dashboard, I'll just go back to my dashboard. There's this invoice queue right here where you can see all of the documents that have been uploaded to NetSuite that haven't had vendor bills created yet. The other way you could get to here is just through the menu. So vendors, advanced flow management, invoice queue. You see the same list of documents here. Once you click create bill and save the vendor bill, that's what causes the document here to be removed from this list. So you don't process it again. If something is uploaded accidentally and it shouldn't be converted into a vendor bill, you can also click the remove queue on the right-hand side.
Awesome. This next question is a good one. So if you need a license to upload and save vendor bills, do they need to have a license for their generic AP email address to use this solution?
Do they need to have a license for their generic AP? I think
Seth, I think what they're
what this
trying
is
to
asking
say,
is, yeah, I think what this is asking is like, do you need a license to be able to email invoices in from a generic AP inbox? The answer is no. You don't need a license to do that.
Okay. Awesome. So can the OCR capability be used to generate a PO receipt?
No, we don't have that functionality.
Right. It's just for uploading the invoice itself.
It's for uploading the invoices, yeah, and capturing the vendor bills.
Awesome. So this next question is, can the solution handle multiple custom segments like department, class, project name, subsidiary? I think we just went over this as well with the different customizations and workflows that you can set up.
Yeah, so if that's related to approvals, absolutely, you can leverage all those and to set up approval routing. If it's just talking about how, like, can you capture that information when you're entering the vendor bills? Yes, it's the native vendor bill form. All those kind of native fields and functionality will still exist.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So this next question is, where is the price list and is there a trial period? So we do not offer a trial period. However, we do set this up through an implementation. So you know when you're getting started on this solution that is all set and configured to what you need. The pricing information can be found on our website under NetSuite add-ons. It is the advanced bill management option. You can see the different tiers and what comes with each of the tiers there. So we'll switch back to Q&A because we just finished all the questions that were listed in the chat box. So this question is, do the approval types have to have a matching NetSuite native approval?
Oh,
that's the one that we asked to be reworded.
Yeah. Okay.
So the rewording is, there is no NetSuite approval for inventory counts. So can you set up an approval for this?
Oh, I see. I think what this is asking is, in NetSuite, there's the ability to set up approval routing for particular records in NetSuite, and there's a limited set And what that means is if you try to set up approvals for something other than that set, you absolutely can do it through our solution. You can set up approvals on other record types, but NetSuite just natively won't kind of make things non-GL impacting while they're pending approval. So you are limited in that respect to those set of records that NetSuite supports approval routing for if you're concerned about making things non-GL impacting while they're pending approval. There are workarounds often on record types where maybe you can make something inactive while it's pending approval, or maybe set the quantity to something while it's pending approval. There's ways around it, but I would say you would typically want to stick to the list of record types that NetSuite provides for approval routing if you're really concerned about that posting status.
Okay. So this next question is, can a manager code or change the expense coding while approving an invoice?
Yep, so our solution supports the ability to lock things while they're pending approval, but you can unlock them for specific roles. That's pretty common. It's also very common to have on the vendor bill side, once something has been fully approved, locked to everyone except maybe in someone in AP to be able to recode something if necessary. And the other common thing we see is on purchase orders and vendor bills, allowing employees to change it after it's been approved, but if the amount changes at all, that reroutes through the whole approval process again. It's pretty common.
Awesome. So what happens when you have no historical data to match the expenses in one new invoice or vendor?
It's going to ask you to choose the expense accounts the first time, and then the next time it's going to, if you were to choose the same expense account for all the lines, it would choose that same expense account the next time when you upload a vendor invoice.
Okay. And this question asks, are custom segments supported? So I believe we just touched upon that a little bit.
Yeah, so custom segments on like the vendor bill form, let's say when you're uploading invoices, that will work perfectly fine. We will not try to auto populate the custom segments in the currently how it works. So it does auto populate the category, the count, department, and class. Currently, you would need to kind of populate the custom segment for the lines. With that said, it's kind of one area that's come up a lot where we want to expand kind of all the field, like expanding the ability to pre-populate other fields at the line level based off of past history. That's a good question.
Awesome. So that was all of our questions so far. We'll wait another minute to see if anything else comes through. Otherwise, Seth, will you let David take over the screen share so we can get our contact information back up on the screen?
Absolutely. I'll stop sharing.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for a great presentation. Thank you all for your engagement. Those are some really great questions. If you think of anything else you want to ask us, please use this contact information. You can reach out to David. This webinar was being recorded, so I will go ahead and publish this. And you can find it on our YouTube channel or through our website on the company events tab.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
Thanks. Bye-bye.